Ohio State is scary. And what's scary about this college football team is that they look like a pro team that is rounding into form. Not unlike Texas, not unlike Georgia. I believe that you can really have Ohio State at 1 or Texas at 2, Georgia at 3, or some combination of the 3, as long as those are your top 3 teams going into the final week of September, because they have been really rough and yet really dominant. An example of this is beginning of the fourth quarter, that's about 11 minutes left to play. The score is 49-14. You have the twos in. The day is over for the starters. And all Ohio State fans are thinking about is, looking a little soft against the run, guys. Hey, how did we leave a kicker out there to, 1, kick it out of bounds a second time, and let alone a third time before we got that right? Special teams for Ohio State was an oxymoron. Brandon Ennis muffed a punt, but it was called back because, well, they didn't have enough men on the line of scrimmage for the punt. If you're Marshall, little things like that where they could have made a 14-7 game a 14-up game. But, I mean, a lot of different ways to look at this. So I'm just going to start with real positive, and then we'll work through some of the stuff that really Ohio State fans are probably going to get into their feelings about, if for no other reason than they ain't played nobody, right? You played Akron, you played directional Michigan, and you played Marshall. Not exactly indicative of the caliber of football teams you're going to face in conference play, let alone in the college football playoff. And we'll find out more and more about what this team is like, but they got dudes everywhere. I mean, Will Howard went 16 of 20 for 275 with 2 TDs, and we'll talk about the pick. Quinshon Judkins, 14 rushes for 173, including 1 he took 86 yards to the house, 2 TDs. Travion Henderson, 6 rushes, 76 yards before they gave him the hook. Omega Ibuka took 170 yards on a bubble screen, 5 catches, 117 yards, and a TD. Jeremiah Smith shows up a little bit later after the interception. Again, we'll talk about it. But this is a dude that is a true freshman, and he's got a third game with a TD. He's got 281 receiving yards. He's got 14 receptions. He had 3 for 70 in this game, putting together one of the great true freshman seasons by a wide receiver. Talk about that. But off the rip, I'm looking at this, and Ohio State has become a version of A, they're great, and B, WWJD. What would Jeremiah do? That's the question that we wanted to see answered, and wasn't much until the second half of the game. But Will Howard has the best job in football, man. Like, opening drive, throw a bubble screen to Omega Ibuka. Omega Ibuka takes it 70 yards to the house. Hey, we're backed up against our own end zone. It's fine. I'm going to hand the ball to Quinshon Judkins. He's going to take it 86 yards to the house. Explosives on explosives on explosive here. Will Howard just needs to exist between getting the ball from Seth McLaughlin to a playmaker and then just watch, because that seems to be what the job is. And I've said this before, and I mean this. All he has to do is be Craig Krenzel. You ain't got to be the offense. You ain't got to do what Justin Fields was doing. You don't have to even do what C.J. Stroud was doing, except you do have to beat Michigan. You just have to exist long enough to get playmakers all over the field opportunities to do what they do. Now, I said we're going to talk about the interception. There's a thought here that Joel was actually very smart about, which is he didn't think that Jeremiah thought he was going to get the ball. And I think that this is important because Will Howard threw a jump ball up. Should he have thrown that ball? No, he should not have thrown that ball. His wide receiver was walled off. There was no play for him to make except it's J.J. Smith. Do you expect Jeremiah Smith to make that play? You absolutely expect him to make that play because that is what his talent has told us. But he is transitioning from a player with talent to a man with purpose. And I think he is a man with purpose. And it's going to get to be kind of scary once those brotherhood routes become part of what he's doing. And I think that's what was supposed to be going on here. He was supposed to be running a brotherhood route, and it was actually a route where Will Howard's like, I got one-on-one with Jeremiah Smith. I think I'm just going to throw it up there. And he threw it short. If you're running that route full out, maybe you separate like you're supposed to when you can run 23 miles per hour and get past the Marshall cornerback, but he wasn't quite there yet. Still, there's some things for him to figure out. There's some things that look rough. Again, they are super talented and super explosive, and they got player makers all over the field, and yet they're still rounding into form, which is kind of scary, but also you would like to see everything be sharp and on time. But you'd rather that Ohio State be sharp and on time in the middle of October and through the month of November into December than you would in, what is week 4 of the college football season. I also think that it's important to point out that they got pairs. Like, they got doubles everywhere. They got JT and Jack, right, at the ends. They're deep enough at defensive tackle where Tyleik Williams doesn't have to go. They've got Trey and Q in the backfield, right? Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. They got Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun, on the edges. And I think Jordan Hancock is an outstanding player, along with guys like Latham Ransom and Caleb Downs, and, of course, JJ and Emeka. But the thing that I wanted to talk about that we kind of didn't get there quite as quickly or have as much of a game as I thought it was going to have was Jeremiah Smith and what he has been able to do. Because between Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams at Alabama, those are the two best true freshmen in the sport right now. And they have an opportunity to really set themselves up to be the best true freshmen ever at that position in the sport, with guys like Stephon Diggs, Rondale Moore, even KC Concepcion, who's getting his butt kicked at NC State right now, down the list, right, of guys that were absolutely outstanding as true freshmen. And then we'll see how they go. Nick Marsh is another guy at Michigan State having one hell of a day, one hell of a year. Bryant Wesco at Clemson, Ryan Wingo at Texas. We can keep going here. It's gonna get nasty for this particular group, 2024 wide receivers. Remember that in week 1, Smith was one of just 4 freshman wide receivers to start across the country, and he came up with 92 receiving yards and 2 TDs in that game. That was Akron. That was August 31st. He also has run, going into this game, 45 routes, and that's more than any other freshman so far this season, including Ryan Williams. And through 2 games, he led the Buckeyes in receiving yards with 211 catches. Again, he is been not just a starter for Ohio State, but a number 1 guy, right? You're actually running combinations between him and Emeka, and you got Carnell out there. And anytime you want, you can go get Mylan Graham or Brandon Ennis, throw into that mix. But I love this quote that Ryan Day gave about Jeremiah Smith last month. He's built different. Just the way he approaches it, you can see his size, you can see his speed and all of that. But typically somebody with that type of talent doesn't have to have the discipline, the focus that he does. And I think that's worth pointing out, right? And that also can be translated to a lot of these wide receivers. I love Arbor wide receiver coach Marcus Davis was talking about another outstanding true freshman in Cam Coleman. And I love this quote because of the use of the Southern slang dang, okay? I don't even have dang TikTok, but he's sending me clips of guys in the NFL playing with certain route techniques at 11 o'clock at night. Once you get a guy like that, you're doing all you're doing is sharpening that toolbox that he already has. And I get giddy about that stuff too because I'm that kind of person. I send notes to my producers all the time about things I'm seeing. I talk to my editor all the time about stuff that I would like to write about because I'm always on. I'm looking for angles, and I'm trying to sharpen this thing up. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk a little bit about what Jeremiah Smith is doing and the kind of context that we should probably put it in as we're continuing to talk about this. I mean, we're talking about Xavier Worthy. We're talking about Julio Jones. We're talking about Tyler Boyd. We're talking about Stephon Diggs, Rondale Moore. I mentioned them. We're talking about Corey Davis. We're talking about guys that Marquise Lee, Christian Kirk, guys that we know by their first names by the time they get to the NFL. And I think that is the route, no pun intended, that JJ is running and that Ryan Williams is running. Again, the thing you want to see from Ohio State, though, is be stiffer against the run. I think Marshall was just able to spread you out, and Stone Earl, when he was on the field, was more or less being able to get what he could, take what he could get, and then because you had to come down, suck you up, perhaps he can hit you over the top in the middle with a little run pass option. I think that would be a way that I attack Ohio State if I'm a better football team, and that's really what these games are doing for your opponents. You're showing weaknesses. you're showing, oh, special teams, cool. We'll dial something up for you on kickoff. We'll dial something up for you on punt, because right now it looks like the weakest unit of that group. That interior middle, right? When Tyleik Williams is not there, force Cody Simon and Sonny Styles to come down, make them make plays. Try to, as much as you can, roll away from Caleb Downs, right? Make Latham Ransom be the Latham Ransom that he has been. I think if you can force Will Howard to throw the ball more often than you would want to, you're also winning. But that was a thing. Last year, Ohio State couldn't run the ball with any consistency against great football teams. This year, it looks better, because this is also the first time that they had all 5 of the guys that you expect to be on that starting offensive line available to them. And you could see the difference that it was making. You could see how Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson were able to bounce outside and really take advantage of those lanes and use their speed. And you could see the power that they have in breaking tackles. If they can run the ball like that the rest of the year, cancel Christmas in the Big Ten, because then they're going to do whatever they want to do. The best bet you have is perhaps getting to Will Howard, who at least in this game showed you that he will make a boneheaded throw. And maybe you're not Marshall, and you